Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Hour, where twice a week I throw a little chaos into Star Trek uh, and review a random episode. Today's episode is from TNG: The Next Generation, season 4, episode 23, The Host. So last time, when I random generated the episode, I couldn't remember what it was. Now, looking back, it's pretty obvious. Uh, so, but the episode, to me is not that memorable, so that's probably why. So, it starts off with Dr. Crusher's personal log. Um, Basically, long and short is she has a boyfriend, and they've been dating, I think, for 3 months. And anyway, they're on the turbo lift, they're making out, and then Data comes in, and he's talking about some kind of thing. It's not important to the story. Uh, and they're trying to pretend like they're not together because he's like an ambassador. I don't think that really matters, but I don't think that's against like Starfleet protocols or Starfleet rules. I forgot to turn on the light there. This is not a professional operation. I'm stealing that line from AJ from Y-Files. If you haven't checked out Y-Files, please do. We talk about all kinds of paranormal stuff, aliens. So she's trying to basically get rid of Data, and he's like saying he's sick, and his name is Odan, and he's sick, and he's trying to, and she's like, well, I can bring by something to your quarters, and basically trying to get Data to go away so they can go back to making out. And he goes to his quarters. He's like taking off his shirt, and all of a sudden you see this bulging thing in his stomach that's kind of moving, and that's the teaser. So after the credits roll and the theme plays, Dr. Crusher's in his quarters with him, and she's like brushing her hair, and he comes up behind her, and they basically got done, having sex or whatever, and she's got to go, and he's trying to get her to stay, and they're, in that stage where you're just in love and you're having sex all the time, and you don't want to part, but you got work to do and stuff like that. And he's he's trying to get her to stay, and she can't. So at that time, Picard calls Odan to the observation lounge, and they meet this alien. So there's this one world with 2 moons. Both moons are inhabitable, and they're kind of like in the middle. The 2 moon people, is Alpha. They call it Alpha and Beta, and they're like fighting over resources. Like one of the moons is like going in. I think it's the Beta one that's going into like a global warming period, and they need resources, and the other moon has abundant resources that they're trying to acquire and stuff like that. And they're at the precipice of war. And the world that this alien comes in and talks with Odan and says, oh, your father was a great negotiator, back in the day, and we hope you can do the same this time around because they're about to go to war with each other. And and by the way, Picard says something. I think Nurse Ogawa maybe is there. She says something, and Picard's like, "Well, we don't know much about the Trill." No, it's Deanna. It's Troy. Troy says something about she senses something's up with Odan, and he's like, "We don't know much about the Trill." So this is the introduction of the Trill, and I'm not gonna give it away, even though anybody that's watching this has probably seen this episode and seen Deep Space Nine. But so there is a moment where Dr. Crusher has like this look on her face or smile on her face, and Deanna's like, "Oh, what's up with you?" And she's like, "Oh, I've just been in a good mood lately, trying to keep everything a secret." So then she's in like the barber shop getting like her nails, her toenails painted. I almost said foot nails. Who says foot nails? Toenails painted and like her fingers, manicured or, something like that. And Deanna walks in and starts questioning her because she realizes that she's seeing Odan. Crusher does something in the observation lounge that kind of tips her off, and I don't remember what it was. But she has this like smile on her face while everybody else is talking. And so Deanna comes in and visits her and, asks her a bunch of questions and kind of eventually gives it away that she knows. And Crusher's like, I wish you weren't such an empath all the time. And Deanna's like, well, I'm pretty sure it's not a secret. And, so back in Picard's ready room, Odan walks in and Picard asks him what's his plans. How's he going to deal with this situation? And he's basically says, I just kind of, each situation's different, so I just wait till I get there to kind of figure things out. And then, he says that your staff has been very helpful, especially Dr. Crusher. And he starts talking about how she's really good. She's a great woman and all this stuff. And you can see Picard's kind of uncomfortable, and he's trying to, he's like, what's going on here, And then he asks Picard like about some more questions about Crusher. He's like, I know you've known her for a long time and stuff, and this is the point where you can kind of tell that Picard's like, oh, okay, there's something going on here. And it makes him kind of uncomfortable. But they're cut off because I think it was Worf that says that the shuttle is ready. Because this guy wants to, I forgot to mention that. They say, you need to he wants to go down to the planet so he can talk to these people face to face, And that alien woman is like, oh, it's too, it's a little dangerous, and he's like, well, I'm going to take a shuttle. I'm not going to transport. Makes him mention that, some people aren't too keen on, having their molecules scrambled and stuff like that, which that would be Dr. McCoy. And so he goes to the shuttle bay, and Crusher's there waiting for him. And I think LaForge is like escorting him there. And then Riker's there, and he wants to pilot. He's, personally piloting the shuttle, I guess, to ensure that nothing goes wrong, or that it's more safe or whatever. Because the Enterprise is basically just transporting this ambassador to this planet, and so they get into the shuttle, and then all of a sudden a unidentified ship appears and attacks the shuttle. And so Picard engages the tractor beam, but it's not working, and he wants to transport, like emergency transport them out of there. Riker says, and and Odan is like injured at this time, and he's like, "No, you'll kill me if you transport me." And he's like, "Okay, we're gonna have to do it manually because the shuttle's damaged, and so he flies it manually into the shuttle bay, and he's like laying on the operating table, and Crusher's examining him, and all of a sudden they see this thing moving in his stomach, and he's like, she tells him she has to do an emergency operation. It seems like there's a parasite inside of you, and so on and so forth. And he grabs her and says, "No, I'm the parasite. I'm a host to this symbiont." So that's the Trill. Is basically, you have the Trill, which are a humanoid race, and they host this like slug like figure. And in this episode they have like forehead ridges, and not where in Deep Space Nine they just have spots. They don't have the forehead ridges. So a few things change from Next Generation to Deep Space Nine, and I'm going to go over that a little bit. And in the end, well, I mean, that's one of them. The other one is, in this episode he changes. So basically he dies. The humanoid dies, but they save the slug, which has all the memories from like past lives, past hosts, and so he basically was his father before. That's how he's so good at negotiating with these people. So as they change, he changes host to, so Riker, well, the host is the symbiont can only last outside of the body, the host body, so long, and the Trill world is going to send a new host that will link up with the symbiont, but it's not going to show up in time for these negotiations. So they have to figure out a way to get the symbiont in some host's body, and Data asks if it can be him, and Crusher's like, no, the way it's explained to me, it has to be a living person, a real life form, not a synthetic one. So Riker speaks up, and he volunteers himself. So they go to do the surgery, and it at first it's kind of wonky, but then it works, and the host um, you know, wakes up. And so earlier in the episode, this guy, Odan, was calling Dr. Crusher Dr. Beverly. So then Riker wakes up and he's like, "Oh, hello there, Dr. Beverly. Dr. Beverly. Uh, so it ends up working. So, um, he like starts being affectionate with her and stuff, and she's kind of weird about it because it's Riker, you know, and she doesn't really like that it's a different person, and she gets mad. She's like, "You could have told me this from the beginning before we started dating and stuff like that. That this is gonna happen." And what happens when the other host dies, and all this stuff. She gets mad, and she goes to 10 forward. She's kind of, I don't know what she's drinking. It looks like she's just drinking tea, but because she has the same glass that Picard uses for Earl Grey. That's the only reason I thought it was probably tea. They don't say. So she goes 10 forward, and Troy comes in to talk to her, and basically talking about her feelings, and how she feels like she was in love with. She tells a story about how she was in love with this guy, and they got married and had kids and blah blah blah, and that was like in her daydreams when she was like 11, and but she's like, she hasn't felt this way in a long time, I guess since Jack died, and had really loved him, and does she mourn the guy that she was in love, or does she continue to love this Odan, the slug, basically love Riker, or the new host or whatever, and Troy tells her, you gotta go with your feelings, and just kind of she says, the first man that I would love was my father, and he made me feel good, and and he's not around anymore, and I would give anything to have that protection back, to have that feeling of back, and stuff like that. And then Odan, Riker walks in, and he kind of has this weird look on his face, that he doesn't understand because their society's different. And so then the two representatives from the two moons show up, and they ask Odan questions to kind of like test him to see if he's really who he says he is, because from their perspective, it's Riker. It's a Starfleet officer. It's not the person they were expecting to see. And he explains the situation to them, and then tells them, the old, tell me something that, this is all information that you could look up. Tell me something that, that's not public information. And he tells them a story, and so they believe him and they accept him. And then Riker's body starts rejecting the symbiote, and they take him to sick bay and give him some pain meds, and he tries to kiss her, and she's like, "No, get away from me. I don't want to be with you like that anymore. And then back in Picard's ready room, um, he's kind of worried about negotiations because he's worried that Odan's gonna, you know, that Riker's body can't take this much longer, and the medications that they're giving him is like wearing off, and is he even up to the task? Because because he doesn't want the moon people to know that he's like sick or anything, or there's anything wrong with him. So then Crusher is in her quarters, and she's like looking at this flower that Odan had given him, and then they keep switching back and forth to him, and he's asking the computer where Dr. Crusher is, and then he's like getting sick, and he's kind of, they keep this juxtaposition type thing, and finally Crusher goes to his quarters, and she's like, I'm worried about you, and I think I need to give you more medicine. And you can tell they're both kind of horny for each other. And then the conversation, they start getting closer and closer, and then they start making out again, and of course probably have sex too. So she had sex with Riker. So then Crusher. So then, like I said, the medication is not working. So it's wearing off faster and faster. And so he needs to get this done, ASAP. And then they get a message from the Trill world saying that the Trill host is going to be late by like 9 hours. And Picard's like, maybe we should warp there as soon as possible, but there's no time. There's basically a ticking time clock. Riker's body can't take this much longer. The host can only stay out of Riker's body for so long. So there's a ticking time bomb. So anyway, they're like had been negotiating for like 6 hours. Finally, he comes out and he collapses. And he says something like, they will not go to war. So basically he got the job done and was managed to get them to make an agreement. And then the new host shows up, and it's a woman. So she does this. Crusher does the surgery, and it's successful. There's no problems. Everything's fine. And then the woman comes in to Crusher's. Odan comes in to Crusher's office, and she's like just trying to resume things, resume the relationship, and Crusher's just like, no, maybe it's just our human customs are too different right now, but I just can't do this, it's just, and that's it. So, first of all, this is a very, very mid episode, which is probably why I couldn't remember what it was about. It's obvious now, but I thought it was something, I don't know. I thought it was one of those, like I know the child where Deanna gets pregnant from some like non-corporeal entity. Anyway, the other change, okay, so like I said, in Deep Space Nine and going forward, They have spots instead of the forehead ridges. And then the other change is when this symbiote changes hosts, the symbiote basically in this episode has the same personality throughout hosts. So when it's the original one, Riker, and then the woman, they're all the same memories, blah blah blah. In Deep Space Nine, with Jadzia and Ezri, it's the same symbiote, but different personalities for each host. So when, and I forget the name of all of them, but when Jadzia dies, and the Dax symbiote is passed on to Ezri, completely different personality. And from when Jadzia's prior host, which I cannot think the name of, but he was a Klingon ambassador from the Federation. He was completely different. He was a womanizer, drinker. He liked to joke around, stuff like that. One of them was a murderer, like a psychopath. One of them, and there's an episode, and they're supposed to go through like little rituals and there's certain rules. You can't fall in love, all these rules. So obviously this is before Deep Space Nine and them fleshing out all that stuff, but I like what Deep Space Nine did better, and it would make more sense in my opinion. So very mid episode, 5 out of 10, 5.5 out of 10, only because they introduced a new species. But there's no, I mean, the B plot and the A plot sort of converge and are sort of part of all of one story. So, not much to say about that one. I think the reason they got rid of the ridges was because Terry Farrell was, just so hot that they didn't want to mess up her face too much. The spots were easier, I guess. But, okay, I don't think I see anybody in the chat, but let's take a look. All right, so so tonight, I can't talk tonight. Yeah, short review this time around because not much to say. It's a very mid episode, and okay. So, one thing. I was gonna do my Star Trek Strange New Worlds review tonight, but I did not have time to. I've seen the episode once, but I want to watch it again just to, to see if I catch anything else or if I feel the same. Yeah, I would say it's my favorite episode this season so far, if not my favorite of the whole series. It's classic Star Trek TOS type episode, and I can't wait to talk about it actually. And I've gave this show a lot of shit, but what can I say? If I like an episode, I like an episode. But I'll give that review on Wednesday after I do my Red Hour. Um, because I just don't have the time. I'm sorry. But let's take a look at what Fate has decided right now. It's still on the host. Didn't screw that up this time. I'm gonna randomize it. Speaking of Deep Space Nine, we got Deep Space Nine Season 3, Episode 8, Meridian. Don't remember that one. But if it's Season 3, there's a better chance that it'll be a good one. Episode 8, it gets better towards mid-season, but it's possible. As Joe Rogan would say, it's entirely possible that it could be a good one. I don't remember. I am more familiar with TNG and their episode titles, and probably TOS too, than I am Voyager or Enterprise or Deep Space Nine. Seen them all through and through, like a bunch of times. I used to keep Pluto TV on, just kind of rotate them out. Now I'm watching in rotation of Mystery Science Theater. Just kind of in the background while I'm doing shit on the computer or listening to a podcast or whatever. So Meridian will be on Wednesday, and then I'll do the Strange New Worlds Season 3, Episode 6 review. Once again, I'm the Dead Man, and welcome to the Red Hour. I want to thank anybody that is lurking. Nobody seems to be in the chat today, so that's okay. I want to thank anybody that stops by in the future and watches this. Have a good night, everyone. Hope to see